Hey there, how do you go from something like this, which is a customer request, to looking at the problem really easily here and then solving that specific problem, showing the different languages that are supported, which is what the problem is all about here. I find a lot of the videos out there on YouTube and a lot of the articles about Claude Code don't talk about real world features. They talk about these giant greenfield demo projects, but that's not what we need in our day-to-day lives as product builders and engineers. We need to solve real customer problems, and that's what I wanted to take a look at here today, and how to solve this customer problem here. So let's super quickly talk about the problem. I'll show you what it is, and I'll show you the solution really quick, and then we'll kind of walk through the process itself. So AudioWave is my app that lets you convert text to speech, and this customer here is asking what languages are actually being supported by the tool, and I answered that there's a lot of languages and we don't do a very good job of communicating that on the app, and he suggests changing that, and 10 other people just like him messaged me over time, and I thought it was about time to do that. It still took me a couple of days, like 4 days, to get to it because I had other things to do, which is lesson number one, is just leave a little bit of space for customer requests. And it took 4 hours to complete this task, which I think we can do faster, and we'll talk about it towards the end of the video. But let's take a look at the actual problem. So there's voices here in our app. This is the voices screen that shows you the different voices that we have supported. If you look carefully, you will see that we talk about there's the voice name, like Alloy, and then male, female, and then talks a little bit about the US English versus the British English here. That's why it's there. And if you look at the page at face value, you'll see that there is English. We talk about English. We talk about Spanish. We talk about English again, but with Indian accent, and Portuguese here specifically. And it would look like we only support these languages here, like three languages here, which is totally incorrect. This is a multi-language voice, supports 100 languages or so, and we need to show that in the UI. Let me show you the end result, which would seem really obvious as you kind of see it, but there's a process to get to it. So between this and this, let me just jump really quick. Here and here, it seems like not a lot has changed, but actually a lot of things have changed, minor things. So remove the style here, label doesn't need to be there. We moved the languages from here down to here, so it's more consistent across. So English US here, English UK instead of English British, and then 99 languages here, and they're sorted alphabetically, and you can find English here as well in like 4 columns, which is not something I would have thought about myself. And then there's a couple of edge cases here, which are the specialized languages in these accents here. So Spanish, Mexican here, and then which doesn't need to show, doesn't have any other languages it supports. And then we have Indian, Hindi, and English here, and Portuguese as well. So we kind of clean some of that stuff up here. Okay, cool. So what do you do now? So the first thing after I got this customer request, the first thing I did personally was to create a quick linear ticket to remind myself of this issue here. I took a couple of screenshots of the different areas of the app that show the voice itself. There's another area right here where we're actually looking at a chapter in a book, and we're trying to convert it to audio, so we can select the voice here. Those kind of major areas in the app, so the drop down and the voices gallery in here. So we broke it down into smaller subtasks. So I wrote down all the different subtasks in here, and I decided to focus on just one subtask instead of going. I could have asked it to address all the subtasks at once, but then I'll have thousands of lines of code. It would be really hard to review it. And you get much better results by doing more focused work and smaller chunks, especially on a production app that you want to ship and not break things. I also have automated tests as guardrails to make sure we don't break anything here. So I looked at all these subtasks and I decided that the easiest, most beneficial thing we can do is update the voices page that I just showed you here. The drop down, I considered it briefly. The reason I decided not to choose it as the first task was that it has limited space in the UI. Here, I'll have to think about how it looks like on the mobile as well. It has collapsed state, it has an expanded state, so it's a lot of things to design-wise to play around with, and I want to address it at a later time. So I chose that task there. I gave it to Claude Code through the linear MCP. Claude Code pulled down the task, looked at the parent task, downloaded all the data, and then I have instructions for Claude in my Claude.md to create a PRD and a plan, usually. A PRD was not really needed in this case because it's small, so I deleted it, but the plan was useful, so I looked at the plan, made sure that everything looks correct on the plan, and then let Claude Code do its thing after I approved it. So you see user approval here in here, so it waited for me to approve it. It approved it, it already had a couple of tasks already going. As Claude was going about its thing, I was reviewing it occasionally. I have it set to dangerously run without any permissions, so it doesn't need my permission to do things. It does what it thinks is best. But I noticed that it was pulling down code from Whisper, which is the speech-to-text tool. We're doing text-to-speech to figure out what languages we support, which I was really confused about. Turns out it was actually doing the right thing. So you always want to ask it and guide it to see if it is doing the right thing, if you don't think that it is. So I asked it, and then I looked at documentation for myself for the text-to-speech API from OpenAI, and I found out that Whisper and that supports the same languages, so it was doing the right thing there, which was great. And then it was time to review the first UI version that it implemented in there. So it did a really good job overall. It showed the number of languages that are supported, which was correct, 100 languages in here. It added some details I didn't talk about, like that is optimized for English. I don't know where it got that from there, so I removed that by hand after. It also created this expandable area that you could click on, like so, expand the languages, and you can kind of see that the languages are not alphabetically sorted, which would be really annoying to scan. So another thing we need to address there. So I took stock of all the things I needed to address. I committed the iteration here right away into Git as soon as it did the first prompt, because it did quite a good job there. Sometimes I'll delete it and ask it again, but in this case it did a good job. So it served as my building block, ask it to fix a couple of things really quickly, and then I was playing around with some UI things with the hot module overloading React to figure out how to fit stuff onto the UI really fast. So doing the design work a little bit. It would be really hard to explain to the LLM what I want to do, because I wasn't sure what will fit and how it will look, so I needed to play around a little bit. But then I got it to work on the higher, bigger, boring things, like replace the expandable language section with with modal like so. So I just placed the link and then it created the modal and placed that in there. So I didn't need to get too much involved in it at the end. It took about 18 iterations to get through it. Sometimes it was code cleanup that I was asking for. So I was also reviewing the code as I was kind of going through it in Cursor in this case. So I kept track of what had changed in the code, and I kept iterating with that. So overall, it took 4 hours to do that, about just 4.5 hours, I would say. I'm super happy with the result. I would never have considered a multi-column layout like this. And if I did this manually, I'll probably spend about a day on it myself. So maybe a 2x improvement on my speed without AI in general, without Claude at all. So overall, quite worth it. But and we'll talk about how to speed this up. And then there's a couple of follow-up tasks that now that I had more time to think about, I could think about these follow-up tasks, like measuring the success of this feature by adding an admin page or asking Claude to add an admin page to measure how many non-English projects are being created and converted to audio. We expect that number to go up now that it's more clear that we're supporting non-English languages in there. So that's how we can measure success. I also got really quickly asked my future wife to take a look at it, and I always like to do some human testing with features to see that it actually makes sense to other people, not just myself. You can tap somebody on the shoulder in a coffee shop and do that. In terms of going faster, can we do it faster? Yeah, one way we could have done this a lot faster, which I should have thought about, but I didn't at the time, was on the very bottom of the landing page. We have frequently asked questions, and this was literally a question that was asked 10 times at least. Now, I should have just added it to the frequently asked question right away. It would have taken me 5 minutes, no AI needed there at all, and shipped it right away, and that was already improved things a lot. And then I could have continued with this task maybe even a few days later there. So yeah, rethinking the tasks in general. But can we do this task faster? Let's think about that really quickly there. So I think we're like limited by, so a lot of the complexity in this task itself is the design. So if we outsource design to another human, that would save a lot of time, and we can probably implement this whole thing in like an hour or 2 at most manually without any AI whatsoever. So that's an option there. And I'll talk about how we can do it with AI in just a second as well. The limiting factor really with the AI is the code review time itself and the testing time. So it'll still take like 30 to 60 minutes to verify that everything's working. We didn't break anything before we can like commit. So we can probably compress this whole thing into an hour. We can probably get the LLM to do most of it automatically by closing the loop. So in my Claude.md, I tell it to write unit tests in general as it kind of goes through the test-driven development. It doesn't make sense for this task. It's more design-oriented task in here, but it does make sense for it to take screenshots as it goes through, and maybe even a video with Playwright or Puppeteer, and think about the user experience and maybe let it stew on it on its own, and maybe give it even some guidelines on what good UX looks like maybe have a markdown file there that explains what good UX looks like with a prompt, and then have Claude Code refer to that as it's as a review in the UX itself and closing that loop. I usually like to run a bunch of different linear tasks at once, so I would run usually like 4 or 5 tasks in a day, and then I would check code review them at the end of the day. Or I would review them as it kind of ends. I have a bell going on each task when it finishes. You can do it really easily by just modifying your Claude.md. In here, I have run AF play with glass sound when the task is complete. So it will do a good job. You can also use Claude hooks to do that. I also love to do in the future role-based orchestration, which is what I kind of talked about, outsourcing the work to different types of roles or agents in this case. So designer role to do a lot of design work, and developer role to build a tester to verify things, and code reviewers to make sure that there's nothing fishy about the code that we commit. And I'm still learning about this stuff, so hopefully I'll do a future video. So overall, it was 371 lines of code changed, super reasonable to test. Didn't have any automated tests. There's 2 files in here. I didn't think that it granted automated tests, to be honest with you. And yeah, so hopefully you learned something. If you like this video, like and subscribe. I'd love to see how you guys would implement it. Thank you. Bye bye.